Save lives. That's the polite terminology.
All right, everyone, we are live. Whoa, that was a big echo. Is it still on? Okay. We are live. Welcome. I would like to recognize that we are on the unceded territories of the Cowichan, Malahat, Subasit, Halalt, Penelakut, Staminas, Liaxin, Palquichin, Dididat, and Pachidat nations who have tended these lands for thousands of years, and we are very grateful. So this is the regular board meeting of Wednesday, May the 14th. I am Kate Segal, Electoral Area Director for Area A, and the chair. We will start with the approval of the agenda with the addition of NB1, R5, our staff report from the Emergency Management Cowichan, Re-2025 Cowichan Emergency Warming Center postseason report from this morning. So could I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended? Moved by Director Abbott, seconded by Director Martman. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Hi, Director Acton, you can hear us okay? Great. Yeah, okay. Excellent. Moving on to adoption of the minutes. Looking for a mover that the minutes of the regular board meeting of April 23rd, 2025 be adopted. Moved by Director Martman, seconded by Director Abbott. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. And that the minutes of the special board meeting of April 30th be adopted. Moved by Director Martman, seconded by Director Wilson. Thank you very much. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. That brings us to public input. Right, Mr. Robbins?
It does indeed.
So our public input period procedure policy allows for 15 minutes. Each speaker gets 3 minutes. And this excludes any items that have been the subject of a public hearing. Your input is very valued and appreciated, and we just request that input is presented in a friendly, respectful manner to help us cooperate in maintaining a safe, respectful environment. And that's very appreciated. Is there anyone in the gallery that would like to come and provide public input? Welcome.
Yes, please, Brian Gray.
I'm gonna acknowledge Ms. Kaufman in the gallery first, and I see Mr. Gregg you online second. Thank you.
Hello, Chair and fellow directors. My name is Susan Kaufman, and I am from Satlam in the CVRD. I would like to speak to the April 23rd meeting in regards to not having same-day items go to the board. I fully recognize that there are circumstances where things have to go to the board, but I think one of the things that's really important is, and for my, I'm
Just
sorry?
a sec, Ms. Kaufman. Yes, Director Martman.
Yeah, items should be referred to same-day agenda items. It should be referred to April 23rd agenda item.
Yeah, I was just trying to find that. Are you saying because this is in the minutes?
Yes.
It's in the minutes?
It's in the minutes,
It's not an agenda item.
but it's not an agenda item.
So the minutes are part of the agenda.
Not for public input. Question mark, Mr. Robbins?
Chair, I think that would be something that you need to rule on. The policy is silent. We traditionally don't, or I haven't seen this assembly take questions with regards to the minutes of a previous meeting, given the fact that the items that are make up those minutes of a previous meeting, somebody could provide you input or even the question period at the time that information was shared as part of the agenda. But we defer to you to
Okay. I have the decision-making power. Okay, so Ms. Kaufman, that, yeah, we're not making a decision on that item today. We referred that to our governance committee, where we had conversation and I believe we made a recommendation, which will be coming to a future board meeting as a committee report. So I think at that time, when we're going to make a decision on that, would be the better time to provide us that input, so it's fresh.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you. I guess the board is going to be voting also on the nuisance bylaw. So does that fall under the same category?
Let me just check with our parliamentarian, because speaking on bylaws is sometimes not with the public hearing, et cetera.
Couple of things. The nuisance regulation service established bylaw wouldn't be subject to a public hearing.
Okay, so that's okay.
Number one.
Yep.
Number two, again, and I defer to you, Chair, for the ruling on this, this bylaw would have been subject to a previous staff report where the public would have had an opportunity to provide you an input or ask questions with respect to it. But as obviously the policy is silent on it, we can't necessarily document every opportunity. We defer to you for a ruling.
Okay, I'll allow this public input on the nuisance bylaw.
Okay, thank you. Can I have my clock reset or
Yeah,
partially
sorry,
reset?
I took up most of that time. Let's reset.
Okay, thank you. I am in support of the public nuisance bylaw, but where I have concerns is where we're at with budget to enforce bylaw. And often when buildings are in a very poor state or have collapsed, as I had said before, and I wanted to say it in front of the whole board, is it becomes a safety and environmental issue. And simply putting a fence around a property does not address that. And I think that the bylaw officers and department needs to have a budget that will allow them to do this very important work. And also that the bylaw enforcement have more authority and not to address these concerns and not wait until a neighbor complains, because I don't think it should be up to a neighbor to complain.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone else in the gallery? I don't think we have any other public members in the gallery, so I'll go online. Mr. Gregg, are you still there?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Can you turn on your, oh, there you go. You're coming. It's just I have a delay here. Go ahead.
Better?
Yeah.
My apologies. I wish I could be there in person today. Yeah, so I'll keep this very brief. As you all may know, at the most recent EASC committee meeting, Rogers had an item on the agenda requesting a land use concurrence for a proposed cell tower at 2979 Allenby Road. And at that meeting, it was determined that the committee would be proposing to move forward a non-concurrence decision. So I'm here today to ask if the board might reconsider our request for land use concurrence. There's a couple reasons for this. First of all, this is our first time actually going through the CBRD telecommunication antenna structure policy. It's a very thorough process, which included a pre-application meeting with your planning department staff to ensure adherence to the policy, posting of signage on the subject property, multiple newspaper notices, a public meeting, and a mail out to an expanded radius. The consultation process went very well. There was little or no interest from community members. Perhaps the reason was the subject property is a light industrial area, and we're basically in the rear yard of a self-storage lot next to some rail tracks. So I guess what I'm getting at here is really the only substantive concerns we received was from the EASC committee members themselves. And so we were hoping that that might be taken into account and that the decision might be reconsidered, given that we did adhere to the policy and the consultation process went very smoothly. Finally, we did explain why co-locating on the telestructure is not viable. I know that was one of the items that arose, but now that that's been explained in detail, we're hoping that we might be able to move forward an amended decision for concurrence. I guess my final comment would be through to the board, if this location is not acceptable, given compliance with the telecommunication antenna structure policy, what kind of a location would be acceptable? Thank you. That's all.
Thank you very much for your input. Mr. Robbins, is there anyone else online? Nope. That's okay. Moving on to delegations, I'd like to welcome David Slade from the Friends of Rails to Trails, Vancouver Island, here to share about the future of the Island Corridor and next steps for the Island Corridor and the ICF. And I'm going to go to Director Abbott, just as we get organized.
Thank you, Chair. I wonder if the board would indulge our delegation a few more minutes for this presentation.
That's moved by Director Abbott, seconded by Director Nicholson. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. So we have, what do we allow 10 minutes? And so this will be up to 20 minutes. Welcome, Mr. Slade. Go ahead. Push your button and you're good to go.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the extension of time. I expected I would make it to my conclusion slide before I ran out of time, but 1 extra minute would be gratefully appreciated. So my name is David Slade. I am the Vice Chair of Friends of Rails to Trail Vancouver Island, or Fort VI. And I'd like to speak to you today about what I think is a golden opportunity that has been laying dormant in our communities for well over a decade now, and of course that's the ENN corridor. On the slide you can see on the left-hand side, that's a picture of the corridor as it exists today south of Shawnigan Lake, and on the right-hand side you can see a picture of the corridor that is a spur line of the Island Rail Corridor that goes from Duncan up to Lake Cowichan. So that was also part of the ENN corridor. Now it is a well-loved and much-used active transportation corridor. And so scrolling is not scrolling. Oh, okay, there you go, button's working. Okay, so who are Fort VI? We are a group of 300 members incorporated to encourage the repurposing of unused Vancouver Island rail lines as multi-use trails. Our vision is to encourage the preservation and protection of the ENN corridor in perpetuity as a multi-use active transportation network connecting First Nations and settler communities on Vancouver Island, and we want this to be a AAA facility. That means for all ages and abilities, which of course is quite doable on a rail corridor because they are very flat and very accessible. First Nations and Reconciliation. I had these all these little things that were going to drop in neatly when I moved the thing forward, but I guess because this is a PDF, it doesn't do that. Okay, so First Nations and Reconciliation. This is a critical piece of this puzzle. On the left-hand side there, you can see in the cream, that is the land that was stolen from the 14 First Nations that are represented on that slide in the ENN land grab, or the Great Dunsmuir land grab. It was taken without consultation, without compensation, without treaty. It was basically land that was outright stolen from First Nations. And if that wasn't bad enough, it was decided that after the First Nations were stuck on these little postage stamps reservations, that in the wisdom of the day, that the best path for that corridor was to bulldoze a path through those reservations and put the rail corridor right through the middle of those communities. And of course, that's heaping on one other layer of insult and injury on top of a mountain of insult and injury that already existed. And much of the legacy of that injury exists to this day. So we are dedicated to the reconciliation process, and we support working with all First Nations to optimize the opportunities, economic and otherwise, that could flow from a high-use, world-class active transportation corridor. Now, that slide in the middle, that's a picture of the Splatsin First Nation, who is signing an agreement with 2 regional districts in the North Okanagan to put a $12.5 million active transportation grant to use to convert 50 kilometers of unused rail line into active transportation. In this case, the Splatsin First Nations were the leaders in the grant. They are the ones that are overseeing and doing the work, and they recognize that they will benefit substantially from a completed trail. So we talked a little about the cost of a trail. They are not cheap to build, but if you look at the Cowichan Valley Trail, again, the spur line that goes from Duncan up to Lake Cowichan on the old E&N rail bed, the entire conversion of that cost $800,000. In today's dollars, that would be $1.2 million. Still pretty economical for 27 kilometers of trail conversion. But when we talk about a trail beside an existing rail bed where it's possible, it's 10 to 100 times as expensive. And so why is it so expensive? Well, when you come to obstructions like trestles and bridges, of which there are 40 along the length from Langford to Courtenay, you've got tunnels, you've got rock cuts, ravines, swamps, and steep embankments, all of which are huge obstructions to building a trail beside the rail bed, as opposed to using the existing path that is there and remains unused and derelict at this time. Environmental impact, that's a big concern to all of us, I think. Again, you look on the left-hand side there, that is a piece of the Cowichan Valley Trail where it is just a path through the forest. Less environmental impact on that than if there was still a train running on that corridor. You can see that the shrubs and the ferns and the trees are all branching in. Obviously, if you were going to have a lot of traffic in both directions, you'd have to brush it out a little bit, but if you compare that to the new Shawnigan Lake Trail, which of course is a beautiful trail, it's well loved, it is much used, but if you check the environmental impact to that against the impact of having put the trail on that rusted, rotten rail bed, it's night and day. And of course, there's also impacts on the property owners all along the corridor whose privacy and whose protection and screening from the rail corridor is damaged by having bulldozed the path alongside of it. And again, we are big supporters of trails. I love trails. All trails are good. It's just that a trail on the rail bed could be so much more useful and beneficial to the entire community than the little bits of trail that you can, in practical terms, put beside the existing tracks. So this is a great example that I like to refer to. So it's the Great Allegheny Passage, that's in Pennsylvania, or the Gap Trail. Very similar in length and settlement patterns. It draws over 1 million visitors every year. And on the right-hand side, you can see a slide showing the economic impact report from 2019. 121 million US dollars in direct and indirect impacts, 74 million US dollars in direct impacts, and it supports almost 1,400 jobs along its length. And it is slightly shorter. The Island Corridor is 289 kilometers. The Island Corridor joins more than 30 communities when you count the towns, the villages, and the First Nations communities. The population that it serves along its length is around 600,000, and the average distance between communities is only 11 kilometers, so easily traveled by bike or particularly by e-bike. In BC, there's a couple of examples of great trails. The Okanagan Rail Trail, 52 kilometers long. The last trains ran in 2013. In 2015, so only 2 years later, the community raised in the community $7.8 million to purchase the corridor and to start the conversion. At that time, there wasn't the kind of grant money that's available today for active transportation initiatives. But you can see that it's getting almost 600,000 visits a year, and that greatly exceeds what their projections were. And they probably had optimistic projections when they made them, but it's greatly exceeded that. And then, of course, we're all familiar with the Galloping Goose in Victoria, which sees almost 4 million users a year. That trail and the networks that it joins makes it so that nearly 20% of the people that commute in Victoria can commute by bike or by foot, which takes a tremendous load off of the other transportation infrastructure and gets people out of their cars and into the fresh air. So the Stantec report, a very informative, fulsome report. On page 9, or on page 10, these are some of the highlights. It says on 80% of the route, rail with trail would be difficult or impractical. So what does that mean? That means on 20% of the route, it is practical. So the vast majority of that route, putting a trail beside the tracks is difficult or impossible. Page 12, in the short to medium term, rail is not affordable. When pushed, the consultants suggested that short to medium was in the 10 to 50 year range. It is not affordable. So what does that mean? Well, it certainly means that in my lifetime, there's no reason to expect that there will ever be trains running on that corridor again. And I'm not going to speak to anybody else's lifetime here, but it seems like a really, really long shot that any of us will live to see trains on that. On page 13, at the present time, rail would be inefficient, unproductive, and very costly. I think that that's quite obvious. And on page 24, it states the most important needs that need to be addressed by the Island Rail Corridor. That's improved transportation connections, expand economic development and tourism, improve safe cycling and walking, provide emergency access routes, and provide recreation and park-like activities in that order of priority. A trail on the rail bed, a continuous trail on the rail bed addresses all of those concerns. And environmentally, limit the removal of vegetation and avoid damage to riparian areas. Of course, the damage has already been done by the rail bed. You don't need to do any more environmental damage by building a trail on the corridor, on the existing rail bed. To support future rail, the line must be contiguous from Courtenay to Victoria. The line is already non-contiguous. The Snawna'as First Nations in the Noose have torn up the tracks and the ties, and they have built a trail on that part of the corridor. The Halalt and the Cowichan are expected to do the same. They have expressed that they have no desire to see trains running through their communities anymore. A trail can very easily go around a reserve. There's only less than 10 kilometers of reserve on the almost 300 kilometers of corridor. And in every case, there is paved roads that can easily take cyclers and hikers around those reservations. So it's an obstruction to trains. It is not an obstruction to trails. Environmental concerns, limit the removal of vegetation and avoid damage to riparian areas. Certainly a trail on the rail bed does that. And to support future rail, we've already done that. So a trail on the rail bed would not preclude the return of rail, and that's what the report stated. But does anybody really believe that in 30 to 50 years that if some sort of rapid transit does return, that it's going to be steel-wheeled on steel tracks pulled by diesel locomotives? I mean, it's going to be something that is going to be elevated, so you don't have 50 level crossings that you have to deal with. It's something that's not going to be a windy road that limits the speed at which these trains can travel. It's going to be something completely different. And the corridor is 100 feet wide. It could accommodate rail and trail. But right now the infrastructure is rusting and rotting away, and it's not serving any purpose whatsoever. So conclusions. There is no funding for trains. That's why the trains stopped running more than 13 years ago, because there was no funding to maintain the infrastructure. The corridor is already non-contiguous for trains. The Snawna'as First Nations have removed their section. A continuous trail is not possible beside the tracks for a number of logistical reasons. A trail would provide huge benefits to First Nations in all communities. There's camping, there's artisan sales, there's trail maintenance, there's food and beverages, all kinds of things that could flow to First Nations and other communities. A spine trail through the CVRD would save lives, and there's a number of ways that could be true. An island corridor trail would be the El Camino Trail of North America. It would be a world-class tourist destination and low-impact tourism. We're not talking about people riding in helicopters and that kind of thing. We're talking about people hiking and biking on the corridor. And the ICF requires a change of its constitution to allow other uses of the rail bed. And these are just a couple of the vistas along the corridor, which would make for very memorable traveling. So how come my slide, oh, there we go. Oh, it's just a delay. Right. Okay. So we've been waiting for 14 years for a train that may never come and really is very unlikely to come in my lifetime. The question is, do we keep waiting or do we pursue an exciting, prosperous Plan B? And, I'd just love to answer any questions if there was any, and I'd love for people to get behind our organization and help us advocate for this.
Thank you very much, Mr. Slade, and thank you for including your contact information for any directors wishing to take conversations offline. They can reach out that way. Looking for clarifying questions, Director Abbott, I'll start with you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Slade. Can you expand on saving lives, how the very many ways you just described?
1, 2, 3, yes. I used to ride my bike in from Cobble Hill on a regular basis and commute into Duncan for work and appointments along the side of the Trans-Canada Highway. And I continue to describe that as a near-death experience. There was dozens of people that were foolish enough to do the same as what I did, but there would be hundreds of people that would do it from the south end if they could do it safely and not have to travel on the highway. There is also the huge health benefits, mental and physical health benefits of getting out into the environment and getting some fresh air and exercise. And then there is, if you had a decent trail of the width of the one that was in Shawnigan Lake, the new rail trail there, if that was the size and the configuration of the trail on the rail bed, you could use it as an emergency access in times when there was disasters or evacuation needs. So it could provide that. There's many places where you can get on and off the trail. It could be a Malahat bypass, or it could serve, a variety of other firefighting, emergency escape and access. So there's lots of ways that it could improve lives and save lives.
Thank you. Director Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, David. Good to see you back again.
Yeah, thank you.
One of the things that comes up right at the beginning of your presentation is the 14 First Nations which are listed there. And I think you said that their involvement was a critical path going forward. So without their acceptance of anything like this, including rail, there's not really anything that can move forward without their agreement. Is that true?
I 100% agree with that. I mean, certainly historically that hasn't been the case at all. But I think that all of us embrace the spirit of reconciliation, and I believe that that's true. I would suggest that that the sections of the corridor that go through the specific First Nations are the ones that would require the consent and support of those specific First Nations. For instance, I'm not sure that the Comox Nation support would be necessary for a corridor through the CVRD, for example. But certainly the support of the Halalt and the Tsumenis and the Cowichan and the Malahat would all be required. I would say not only their consent, but their support for it.
So, and follow up, please, Madam Chair. And so without that support, any suggestion of what you're suggesting here is probably needed for anything to move forward. You've got to have that. What are you doing to try and get that? For instance, you mentioned as well that the constitution of the Island Corridor Foundation would also have to be changed here. So what are you doing? What is your organisation doing as far as reconciliation is concerned for something which cannot happen without their involvement? Well,
thank you very much for that question, Director Wilson. And you're right, you have hit one of the very important spikes right on the head. So we have made presentations to the Malahat First Nation. We made presentations to the Cowichan, and historically to the Tsumenis and the Comox. And we need a champion. We need preferably not just a champion, but a number of champions in regional district governance and in First Nations governance. The Splatson First Nation that I showed that slide of, it would be great if we had a champion of that nature in our community. And maybe we will. Right now, we have put together the BC Cycling Coalition with the leadership of the Splatsin First Nation, and they are developing a podcast on their experience and hopefully sharing what they believe the benefits of such a collaboration between regional districts and First Nations will be. And when that does come out, we will certainly be wanting to share that around. But in the meantime, we are looking for champions. And in regards to the Constitution, that's a very important piece too, and that's something that the regional district can play a part in. What that would mean would be asking or directing your representative at the Island Corridor Foundation to move or support a motion to change the constitution of the Island Corridor Foundation so that it would allow other activities on the rail bed. And that is, that's something that could be a preemptive move. And that would apply to the entire corridor, so that if any section of the corridor, with the support of the local First Nations, was prepared to move forward, they would be able to do so without having to deal with a roadblock at the ICF in the form of a constitutional issue.
Good. And one final one, please, Madam Chair.
Quick one.
I think the Island Corridor Foundation, I'm looking at their website, it says in one of their things that they want, they say create trails and facilitate opportunities for parks, gardens, greenways along the length of the Island Corridor. So is it possible that you would work with them? Or?
Absolutely. I mean, I know the new CEO. I've gotten to know him fairly well. In fact, I invited him to attend this meeting today just so that he could answer any questions that I wasn't, or make any corrections if I had misspoken about anything, but he was unable to attend today.
Thank you.
But yeah, working with them, somebody would have to manage the trail, and I would suggest that the Island Corridor Foundation, which is a cooperation between First Nations and regional districts, would be the body that ought to do that.
Okay, good. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And on the topic of reconciliation, there is the Shared Visioning Project. Of course, that's between the ICF, regional districts, and the nations to figure out if there is a shared vision and what that looks like. And we directed some extra funding to support that ongoing initiative. I have 3 more speakers. I am looking at the clock, and I've noted I gave us until 2:10 for this. So keep that in mind. I have 4 more speakers. I'm going to go online first to Director Acton.
I was willing to take myself off. I'll just make a quick comment then. I think out of respect of listening to the First Nations, and this is a really, almost to the point where it's inappropriate to be talking about what to do with their land when they're negotiating already with the government. And I also think your group's name, if I were First Nation, I would be kind of insulted by the Fort VI part of it.
Fair enough.
That's my comment.
Okay.
Well, like a fort, Fort Victoria.
Oh,
all of that
oh,
is
sorry, I didn't make that.
colonial,
I didn't make that
Oh.
connection.
It's actually
Okay, all right. That's the first time I've heard that.
for your mission.
Avoid the acronym. Director Beeston.
Mine's just a curiosity question. Do you pull up the rail bed and the rails, or do you just cover them over?
Well, if you cover over the ties, they will continue to rot and deteriorate and potentially contaminate. So getting rid of them would be ideal. And there's actually about $8 million in scrap metal value with the steel ties and the plates and the spikes.
Okay.
So harvesting them and recycling them, that would definitely be the best way to go.
Thank you.
Director Douglas.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Slade, thanks for the presentation. I'm certainly happy to voice my support for more trails throughout the rail corridor, which supports our goals not only at the CVRD but the individual municipalities about encouraging more active transportation opportunities while providing another attraction for our local tourism operators. The question I had for you, though, was with regards to the Stantec report. It mentions that if we were to decommission the rail line, change the land use over to trail only, this would trigger soil remediation requirements. And the estimate in the Stantec report is the cost would be between, I think, $76 to $225 million. And that's on top of, I think it's the $55 million estimate to actually build the trail. So I know you're well versed in this, just wondering if you can comment on that, and particularly that $76 to $225 million figure.
So that was something that I was particularly disappointed in the Stantec report. They made the assumption that for the most part, the ballast would be contaminated and would have to be removed and replaced. That hasn't been the case in the Okanagan Rail Trail. That hasn't been the case in the North Okanagan Rail Trail. So I don't know why they believe it would be the case here. And in those cases, in both of those cases, the rail line was operating up until a very short time before they took it over and did the assessment to decide what level of remediation was required. And in both of those cases, in BC, in recent history, there was virtually no remediation required. Remove the ties, remove the rails, grade the ballast, and just keep on using what's already there. So I think that the actual cost of remediation would be somewhere close to nothing. And that's based on real cases in British Columbia in recent history.
Thank you. Alternate Director Tatum to close.
Thank you for the presentation, and I'm fully supportive of the idea. A couple of questions, just following up on the remediation. Wouldn't you have gotten that information from the Cowichan Trail as to whether it required remediation?
I think that there was basically no remediation required on that either, but that was quite a long time ago, and I think maybe some of the rules around environmental considerations. The point was made about changing the status of it. If you changed it to park or if you changed it to residential, there would be probably significant remediation costs. But in the case of the Galloping Goose, it retained its industrial designation. So there is a trail that exists on the corridor, and the corridor retains its industrial designation, so you don't have to change it to a park or remediate it to residential.
And just one quick question. You mentioned you had 300 members that were part of your organization. I wondered what kinds of people those are, and so that they are supportive of this initiative.
Yeah, well, that's a good question. Obviously, I don't know them all personally. Our organization goes right from Victoria up to Courtenay. But they're people who are, I think, active transportation enthusiasts. None of us on our board have got any skin in the game apart from pushing for proactive use of something that has been laying dormant and derelict for years that could provide huge benefit to our communities and alternatives to motor vehicle transportation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Slade, and
Thank you
thank
very
you
much.
to the Friends of Rails to Trails, Vancouver Island, and for your leadership and advocacy for active transportation.
Thank you.
Take care. Okay, Mr. Robbins, we're moving to correspondence, right?
That is correct.
Okay. So we have a letter here from the Cowichan Folk Guild requesting support for applying for the Destination Events Program grant. Is there anyone? I see. Vice Chair, Director McGonigal.
Thank you, Chair Segal. I would like to move a letter of support from the CBRD in regards to the Cowichan Folk Guild application to Destination Events Program grant.
Moved by Director McGonigal, seconded by Director Wilson. Any discussion? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Moving on to our committee commission reports. We have Director Morrison up first. You're live.
Thank you, Chair. Report and recommendations of the Electoral Area Services Committee meeting of April 30th, 2025, and your Electoral Area Services Committee, this is CR1, reports and recommends as follows. From R1, that staff pause proactive enforcement of short-term rentals until staff can report back on feasibility, and I would move that item.
Moved by Director Morrison, seconded by Director Abbott. Any discussion? Alternate Director Tatum, go ahead.
Yes, I find this kind of frustrating, and I don't have all the background of where you've got to on this. But this has been going on for over a year, and there's a number of neighborhoods that are negatively affected by this ongoing problem with short-term rentals. Requesting help from the CVRD is a huge challenge, going through the process and having any positive outcome. And, you know, it's been going on at least a year, and, you know, we keep delaying, and I'm wondering when we're going to see some positive movement and direction on this.
So motion's on the floor, so it's not the time for questions, but if you wanted to
Oh,
state your
sorry.
support or not support
Okay.
for the motion, you're welcome to do that.
I will not support this motion. I would like to get it resolved.
Thank you. Any more discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? And opposed? Director Morrison and Director Tatum opposed. Motion carries. Thank you. Continuing, Director Morrison.
CR2 from the Electoral Area Services Committee meeting of May the 7th, 2025. We have a number of items, and these are for all directors, and they have been previously published, and I will just note that they are number of grants and aids, C1, C2, C3, C4, IN3, R3, R4, R5, R6, and R7. And unless anybody wants any of those pulled, I will move those items for all directors.
Moved by Director Morrison, seconded by Director Nicholson. Any discussion? Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motions carry.
For electoral area directors only, and I am going to pull R1, so I will move R2, which is for electoral area directors only, 2190 Forest Road.
Moved by Director Morrison, seconded by Director Abbott. Any discussion on this one? Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
To R1, I will move the item, and if there's a seconder, I will speak to it.
Moved by Director Morrison, seconded by Director Wilson. Go ahead, Director Morrison.
Thank you, Chair. We discussed this fairly thoroughly at committee, and I'm still clearly having thoughts about it, and it's not just about this particular application, and I'm quite surprised that given the nature of the policy that has been developed by this board and by staff, and that in review of the policy itself and the fact that a large number of the requirements under that policy were met. And during the discussion, clear that there may need to be, even though we have had recent amendments to the policy, clear that we may need to amend it further. But I'm just going to speak to the fact, and I think it was mentioned in public input, that there are areas of this region that need cell coverage. And we've developed a bit of a reputation of not being friendly to new cell towers, and I get that. This is one that I just look at this and think, if not this, where? I think it met 8 of the 10 or 8 of the 11 boxes to be ticked under our cell tower siting policy. So I will not be supporting this resolution, even though I've moved it. I would really ask the directors to consider whether or not we are going to provide any certainty to the industry. Given we put a policy in place, I'd suggest we follow it. That's it.
Thank you, Director Morrison. Director Wilson.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm in complete agreement with Director Morrison there. And I will not be supporting this one either. And some of the comments that were made at the committee there, I'd love to go back to them, but I'll probably get myself into trouble. But basically, if we're going to progress, then this is the way of doing it. So I'll not be supporting this one. Thank you.
Director Abbott.
Thank you, Chair, and I too will not support this motion. As being the area that brought in, it was under my watch that staff helped us with a new telecommunication antenna policy. And as we've heard enough times already today, if this is not a suitable site, then the rest of the CVRD is not a suitable site. So I can't support this.
Thank you. Director Nicholson.
Thank you. I would like the electoral area directors to support this. It's in the Cook-Sila business area, and I think it was a very good example of why the policy doesn't really work. One of the important things in the policy is distance from residential areas, and there are many people that live in this area, and I feel like it's sort of a zoned light industrial, but it has become very much a mixed-use area, and I think people need to be sympathetic to the opportunities there are for this area to develop into a much more vibrant mixed-use area. And I think the thing that bothers me, well, first of all, I will comment on the comment made by during public input period that the community engagement went very well because no one came. And I think that indicates to me that the community engagement did not go well at all. And I know that area pretty well, and I think that there have been questions about it. And most importantly, there is already a cell tower within a block of where they're proposing to put this. And I do not think it is in the interest of our community to have our skies littered by cell phone towers because business, the providers, who make a lot of money on cell phone stuff, are not able to coordinate and come up with a plan that makes sense for our region. So what we do is we're sort of, these things are happening all over, and none of it makes real sense or really provides the service we require. So I just think this is not in the interest of our community, and I would hope that people will support Area E on that.
Okay, any more speakers? So this is for electoral area directors only. I'll call the question. All those in favor? And opposed? Motion fails. Mr. Robbins, what do we do in this case?
We don't have the advantage of the staff report, but there were alternative recommendations that the EA directors may wish to consider. And I know Director Morrison is cued his microphone, so he may have one of those, which is obviously to advance it as another alternative motion then, if this motion is not supported.
Thank you. Director Morrison.
That a letter of concurrence be provided to Innovation, Science and Economic Development Canada in response to the proposed telecommunications facility at 2979 L&B Road, PID 001048171.
I have a point of order. Director McGonigal.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question of clarity, if I may. Given that this has been worked through the committee and vetted through that process and now turned down at the board, should it not be returned to EASC for that resolution coming forward? Or is it appropriate that it be dealt with at the time of dismissal?
Thank you. I'll turn to our corporate officer.
Chair, again, the EA directors were privy to the other options at the committee. To the extent that this board decides to send it back or not, that's the privy of those that are voting on it. But the directors did have the benefit of the report and any alternate recommendations. So I'm not sure that the motion, I wouldn't certainly consider it out of order.
Follow-up, Director
And
McGonigal?
therein lies the complexity of municipal directors not being privy to that information. So just a point there that we can attend, just not vote. Unfortunately, I did not attend, and I'm not going to vote.
Because this is an electoral area director's vote only, and our only two options were either to concur or to not concur. So, yeah, I see, but this
Madam
has been.
Chair, motion to refer.
Okay, I'm going to go in order here. So we've had a motion moved and seconded on the floor. Director Acton, sorry, hold on. Director Morrison, do you want to speak to it?
We can dispense with this pretty quickly. If
But-
Director Acton wants to refer, let her go ahead.
Yeah,
and
okay,
refer.
Director
Let's
Acton, I'll go to you.
Yeah, motion to refer back to EASC. I just don't have, that report in front of me, so I don't know if there were other options. So could we just put this back by 1 week, please? When we have that report back in front of us, all the different motions and
So-
its consequences, so we can make a sound decision.
Okay, so a referral motion is on the floor. Did I see a seconder peek out? Yeah, seconded by Director Martman. Any discussion on the propriety of referral? Let's wait for those ones. Director Wilson.
Yeah, and I'm sorry that Director Acton wasn't there, and maybe she was, I don't know. But this, as I recall, was discussed ad infinitum. It went on for a long, long time. Very, very a very, very long discussion on that. And to send it back again is really, I'm sorry, not the answer right here. I won't be supporting the referral.
Thank you. Anyone else on the propriety of referral? Oh, Director Acton. Your hand's still up. Did you want to speak more?
No, sorry, but I think there were several motions, so I would just like to have them all in front of me.
No, I think there was to concur or not concur. So on the referral motion, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion fails. Back to the motion that's on the floor. Any more discussion on, should we read it out again? That a letter of concurrence be provided for this application. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Oh, Director Martman.
Thank you. I'm hesitant to weigh in this, but I will want to speak to what I consider to be an opinion on that if we turn this down and have non-concurrence, that what we're hearing, and I'm making an assumption here, that what we're hearing is that we're sending a message about our telecommunications, I think, appetite in our regional district. And then I weigh this against the concept of each of us have electoral areas that we're trying to manage issues, trying to understand, what works, what doesn't work. And when something is, from my perspective, so focused on an electoral area, that I lean towards where the director comes from, because they're trying to manage this for the community. Is this, and then on the other side, you have the idea of, are we sending a message that we're not open for business? Quote unquote, sort of idea of telecommunications. And I don't think we have to assume that we're not sending that message. We don't have to make that assumption. I think what we have an assumption is that we're trying to respect and manage an issue for our community, and let the community come on board with it or not. And then on the other hand, I can't assume that the public hearing went good or bad because no one showed up. There's some assumptions that we make, I think, in our own head. But I think I always want to sort of put the advocacy out there for the director of the area to try to manage their area. And I remember my predecessor, Mary Marquardt, bless her heart, always saying, not in my area, over my dead body. And so, but I also don't want that kind of black and white approach to things. But I guess where I'm going with this is, I lean towards the director of the area because I think this is an issue that needs to be managed. But at the same time, tell them not saying that we're not open for business. So I guess I'm struggling with it, but I lean towards the director of the area because I think if I'm in that situation in the future, I would sort of be looking towards you for those kind of support. Thank you.
And I would just add that good governance practices means that we're all here making decisions that we see best fit for the region. Yeah, and sometimes it means we disagree, and that's hard. I don't like it. I get uncomfortable with it. Director Wilson, do you have anything new to add, or am I going to call the question?
Yes, I do. And I'd just like to respond, if I could please, to Director Markman, because yes, I agree with you. There is obviously some form of leaning towards what the director of the area wants. But in this particular case, let me ask a question here.
Director Wilson, we got a motion on the floor.
Yeah.
So we don't need questions.
Okay, all right, let me make a comment then. Where would the emergency services and the first responders be without a service such as this and full coverage? That's it. That's what it comes down to. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to call the question. So I don't want to get into, we're just commenting back and forth to each other as directors. We're talking about the issue of having a telecommunications pole at this location and providing a letter of concurrence to, I can't remember the name of the federal ministry, ISIC, that actually approves this. But Director Nicholson.
Thank you. Well, I mean, I am definitely opposed to this. I do not see the need for 2 cell phone towers within a block of one another littering the skyline. But that said, if indeed that this passes and we have a letter of concurrence going, I think it would be smart of us to include in that letter our disappointment with whatever the organization is, Science and Technology Canada or whatever it is, about their lack of requirements for requirements that people co-locate on top of existing poles, and that there is planning that requires these providers to be proactive in their working together for a region like ours. To me, this is an advocacy piece. I probably should have remembered to raise this with the issue of FCM or whatever. But, I just find this unacceptable, and this is the second cell phone tower problem in my area. And the other one was plunked right in a residential area. And it's just, I don't know, it's just not working. It's not working for Area E.
I just want to, okay. Director Morrison. Director Nicholson, I'll definitely bring up that topic with the CAO, and I'm going to FCM. So are you, right? Yeah. Okay, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Director Nicholson, Director Acton, and Director Martman opposed. Motion carries. Thank you, Director Morrison, for your report. Moving on to Director Abbott for our Cowichan Core Recreation Commission report.
Thank you, Chair. It is recommended that your Cowichan Core Recreation Commission reports and recommends as follows, and in taking consideration of the time, R7, R8, R10, that they be accepted unless anybody wishes them pulled. I'd move that.
Sorry, you're doing, I wasn't paying attention. R7, 8, 10, and CSR1?
Yes. so-
Okay, all together. Moved by Director Abbott, seconded by Director Morrison. Any discussion? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motions carry. Thank you. I have a holder here for CR4, but we do not have, Mr. Robbins, we don't have a CR4, correct?
That is
No,
that
it's
is
just we have
correct.
NB, yeah.
We have NB1, which was an item referred from committee earlier today.
Okay, so we're going to move on to bylaws, and Mr. Robbins, I'm going to call on you to do all the reading.
My pleasure. First bylaw, B1 through B5 are for all directors. Voting B1, the recommendation that CVRD bylaw number 4615 nuisance regulation service establishment bylaw 2025 be adopted.
It's moved by Director Morrison, seconded by Director Wilson. Any discussion? Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries.
B2, two-part recommendation. The first, that CVRD bylaw 4628, unsightly premises and abandoned property bylaw 2025 be granted first, second, and third reading.
Moved by Director Abbott, seconded by Director Callio. Any discussion? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
And that CVRD bylaw number 4628, unsightly premises and abandoned property bylaw 2025 be adopted.
Moved by Director Callio, seconded by Director Abbott. Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries.
And under the B3, two-part recommendation that CVRD bylaw number 4647, bylaw offense notice enforcement amendment bylaw 2025 be granted first, second, and third reading.
Moved by Director Morrison, seconded by Director Staples. Any discussion? Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
And that CVRD bylaw number 4647, bylaw offense notice enforcement amendment bylaw 2025 be adopted.
Moved by Director Abbott, seconded by Director Staples. This is where I should ask if there's any discussion, not at the first, second, and third reading. Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries.
And under the B4,
Bingo!
This is, you did pass the recommendations, but those were the recommendations from committee to the board, and so the bylaws appear under this section as well. First recommendation, that CVRD bylaw number 4641, residential curbside collection bylaw 2025 be granted first, second, and third readings.
Moved by Director McGonigal, seconded by Director Istash. Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
And that CVRD bylaw number 4641, residential curbside collection bylaw 2025 be adopted.
Moved by Director Abbott, seconded by Director Morrison. Any discussion? Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Under the B5, two-part recommendation that CVRD bylaw 4633, bylaw offense notice of enforcement amendment bylaw 2025 be granted first, second, and third reading.
Moved by Director Abbott, seconded by Director Beeston. Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
And that CVRD bylaw number 4633, bylaw offense notice enforcement amendment bylaw 2025 now be adopted.
Moved by Director Douglas, seconded by Director Abbott. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries.
And for electoral area directors only, under the BEA1, that CVRD bylaw number 4591, official community plan amendment, that's 2522 and 2528 Mill Bay Road 2024 be adopted.
Moved by Director Morrison, seconded by Director Abbott. Is there any discussion? I have something to share since this is in my area. So I want to say that, and it's, been a struggle. I recognize the concerns raised about this 4-lot strata subdivision, particularly around precedent and affordability. You know, these are important issues and crucial that we weigh them carefully. At the same time, this proposal aligns with responsible planning principles located within the growth containment boundary, making use of existing water, sewer, and transit infrastructure, preventing costly expansion. It reflects the density goals in our draft modernized OCP, which has been endorsed by extensive community engagement. This densification within the growth containment boundary supports smart growth rather than rural sprawl. Sprawling development leads to higher infrastructure costs and greater environmental impact. Now, while these homes are not classified as affordable, each will include a secondary suite, providing much-needed rental housing in Mill Bay. Historically, growth in Mill Bay has focused on single-family homes on large lots, but the economic realities we face today have made that model increasingly inaccessible. If we want community that's livable, inclusive, and resilient, we must support sustainable growth and greater housing diversity, and that's why I support the adoption of this bylaw. Thank you. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Robbins.
And then the final bylaw on the agenda, that's CVRD bylaw number 4592, South Cowichan zoning amendment bylaw 2522-2528 Mill Bay Road 2024 be adopted.
Moved by Director Abbott, seconded by Director Wilson. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. We made it through all those. Thank you, Mr. Robbins. Moving on to our notice of motion. Director Acton.
Thank you. Sorry, my connection's not great today. My notice of motion was in respect to our delegate for Cowichan Youth Services. And my request was to the CVRD to do some kind of inventory so that the delegate's request was to keep youth in mind. So understanding where are we putting youth front and center, and perhaps where do we have some gaps. So I know it's a really broad topic, but we've never actually focused on youth before. So I was thinking more of a high-level analysis of where are we supporting youth. And I guess my question would be, if the board does agree to this request, do we send it to our community centers and start there? Because I think on a regional level, it's one thing, but then also another thing to be more at a community level.
Thank you. So before we get the motion on the floor, I know in discussions with staff, there are a number of things that are happening. I wonder if I can turn to our CAO just for a brief summary. And I mean, I agree with Director Acton, youth are not in our strategic plan. I know recreation has never been in our strategic plan, and yet lots of great things happen. So I'll go to Ms. Miles Wilson.
Thank you. So in anticipation of this coming forwards, just a brief inquiry regarding this topic, and I can highlight a few things just so that the board's aware. So there's a number of initiatives that definitely support youth or engage youth that the CVRD is leading and facilitating. So I'll just highlight a few in that. There's a number of programming in the community centers. A number of free activities during BC Youth Week is one. There's a number of events that see hundreds of students participating. That's one item. We've got a number of recreational activities that are engaging youth. So ball, hockey, softball, all like the whole spectrum, summer camps. There's lots of activities that are affordable programming for youth. Looking down here, we are embarking on an Indigenous relations framework, which we're just hiring a consultant in the near future to facilitate the first ever Indigenous relations framework for the organization. I anticipate as we engage with nations that will likely incorporate a youth focus as well. Operations and a number of divisions within the CVRD, we regularly hire summer students as well to make sure that we're providing educational opportunities and experiential opportunities and mentoring youth to choose local government as a career path. And there's also a number of programs that we do in parks. So our volunteer program, we're engaging with groups that focus on youth as well to volunteer in our parks program. So those are just a few things.
Thank you. And I do want to just do a little shout out for infrastructure because that can't speak for itself, but we have a number of world-class dance schools here, specifically because of our Cowichan Center for Performing Arts. That stage really supports a lot of groups. So I'm going to start with first questions for staff. If they're clarifying questions, I see a couple of microphones, but are you looking to speak to the motion? I know there's no motion yet, but I can put that on the floor if we're ready. Is that so? Director Acton, you want to move? Is she like implicitly already moved it because she brought this notice of motion forward? Is that how it works?
She move it.
It's-
Maybe she doesn't want to move it. Second.
Okay, it's been seconded, Director Acton, so I assume you moved it. Yep. Seconded by Director Istash. So speaking to the motion, Director Istash, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Speaking through my role as Chair of Cowichan North Recreation Committee, now that we've got regional recreation, CBRD staff are able to garner a better understanding of the two youth programs that exist. Town of Ladysmith runs a youth program out of Frank Jameson, and North Cowichan has its own department called North Cowichan Youth. So both of those, while operating in Fuller Lake Arena and Frank Jameson as recreational center bases, offer youth support services through life skills, mental health, and even providing food. Our mayor, or Director Douglas, was involved in one of those activities last week. But now through regional recreation, it brings a new scope of opportunity to the CVRD, and that may be the avenue that we can see some of Director Acton's hopes come to fruition through this. But just definitely looking at the work that Ladysmith and North Cowichan are doing, but through those roles now that they're regional recreation at those facilities. So definitely they're recreation facilities, but they're providing more than that, including free food and life skills such as work safe, or most recent was like barista training. And then it's also, especially the Ladysmith, is a socialization space. So they've invested in their community youth room, and that's a place where youth can go and feel safe and have a sense of community. So there's good work happening, and I think regional recreation might be the place to build on that, but not being stuck in the thought that it's just recreation.
Thank you. Director Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, and I'm in full support of this. My direction, I suppose, or my thoughts would be, a lot of what's been spoken about here so far has been during the day. And as far as I know, it's in the evenings when
These are correct.
Sorry?
These are at night.
They are? Okay, yeah, that was my question. How many do we have in the evening? Because if I go back to my somewhat misspent youth, the evening classes did tend to keep me out of 60% of the trouble I got into. So yeah, as long as there is some of the evening classes and that's when I think they're most needed. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Morrison.
Good catch. For fear of maybe showing my age or how long it's been since I've had a youth in my home, I look at this, and when I hear us talking and what's going on, I hear very much, for lack of a better term, government speak or bureaucratic speak. And I guess what I'm wondering is it the intent of this motion to, figure out ways of engaging? I know that there's groups came to us and they're engaging us, but is there a focus in this resolution on interaction and, getting from our youth groups in the communities what they want to see from us? I guess that's through to the mover of the recommendation.
Director Acton.
Well, that's a good comment. So I guess I'm not really sure, because I see, I have local community members saying there's gaps here in South Cowichan. And then we had a delegation asking us to keep youth in mind. So I can't say, oh, well, we are. So I guess it's almost like building an inventory, and what Director Istash shared was kind of very interesting. So I didn't know that existed. So I personally feel like we're almost starting from square one, in the sense of let's do an inventory of where we do support youth. And some of the examples were a little broad, but so where do we support youth? Where are we seeing some successes? And then maybe it's going to maybe Director Ishtash is correct, we're going to the regional rec. I think it's just, let's start a conversation, but I feel like I can't even have the conversation quite yet because I'm not fully aware of what we do have collectively. Does that make sense, Director Morrison?
Absolutely. And as a follow-up, the resolution's great, just as long as the staff that's going to be putting this together are understanding that where's our engagement point, and are we going to where they are to start the engagement? That's it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I see no more speakers, so I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Director Acton. We're going on to our last item, NB1. So this came from our Committee of the Whole this morning. And we have a proposed resolution. Mr. Robbins, you have that? Yes? Two. There are two separate ones. Can you read those out for us? Oh, this is very exciting. Everyone look at your screen. This is a first for our boardroom. We have the resolution. So can we put a 1 and 2 maybe? So
The best thing about it, we can change it on the fly.
we can see amendments in real time, which a number of us have been asking for. So number 1, that staff be directed to collaborate with member municipalities of the CVRD to identify sites within the region that can be proposed to BC Housing for funding under their temporary winter shelter program. And 2, that staff be directed to work with member municipalities of the CVRD to develop coordinated land use planning tools for enabling emergency shelters. I'll be looking if anybody wants to move that, and then we can get into amendments. Director Douglas, are you moving that, or?
I just had a question.
A question,
with
okay.
regards to point 1 there. So it mentions the temporary winter shelter program, but as staff outlined in the report earlier, there is also the extreme weather response shelter funding stream that is also funded by BC Housing. So I wonder if we could consider adding that, recognizing that it is improvement over the program that we accessed this most recent winter.
So to include the 2 different funding stream options?
Yeah, because there's the 2 BC Housing funding streams, and there's the third one that we just accessed through the Ministry of Emergency Management and Climate Readiness.
Okay, these are all operational details that I...
But I think the staff report did mention the 2 BC Housing funding streams as being more desirable.
Ms. Miles Wilson?
Yeah, just conferring with Mr. Elzinga, that's fine. That would be option 1 and option 2, as the director mentioned in the report. You could simply just refer to BC Housing funded shelter and just a broad reference, because that speaks to both.
Cleaner. So how do we do this when we have motions up here? Nothing's been moved yet, so I think we can just change it, right? Is there?
I'm not sure what you want me to do.
So we're going to, that can be proposed to BC Housing for funding. So take off the under blah, blah, blah program.
Blah, blah, blah's gone.
Or funding. You took out funding. We need that. That's really important. Okay, I have a list. Director Staples. We'll get there.
So, in the first part of the motion, it should say member municipalities and organizations within the CVRD, like organizations and nations also, like Cowichan Tribes is included in this, which we talked about earlier, and there's a lot of organizations that already are part of that committee working together, so I don't know why they would be left out, because that's what this sort of seems to imply.
Covers it?
That was organizations.
So we'll add organizations and First Nations, yeah.
Who are already like it working, yeah, because
We're
like
already
the Cowichan Housing
collaborating.
Association sits there, I think our Cowichan sits there. I think like the like Lookout and all those people that run the shelters, they sit on those
Right.
committees, and I don't know who else, but anyways, that's missing.
Order.
And Couch and Tribes, and yeah.
First Nations.
First
is that-
Nations,
Yeah,
yeah.
just thinking of the region,
yeah.
yeah. Just getting our spelling correct here. There we go.
Did you want to mention currently engaged? That's very prescriptive.
Oh, sorry, I did the wrong. Sorry, Director Morrison, you need to push your button again. Staples, there we go.
I think you could say currently engaged, but there may be people missing, so.
I think, do we need help from staff? Is there like a title for this group?
Through the chair, I did attend a meeting of the Couch and Homelessness Coalition a couple of weeks ago, so I believe that's the title. We were just discussing over there that the larger the initiative grows, the least likely it is for addressing this winter. So staff do want to put that consideration out there for the board.
Sorry, I just want to clarify, I'm not, there's a group of people that worked with emergency, worked with our emergency management team. I don't know who are all in that group. I just know that they're not in this motion. So that's what I'm trying to get at, and that to make sure Couch and it is included. I'm not suggesting it goes to the coalition because that's a whole other beast, an important one. But that the emergency response team, I don't know what you all called yourselves. I have no idea what the title was. But just that it's inclusive of member municipalities, First Nations, and organizations that pertain to emergency shelters. So I'm not asking to make it a huge group because I totally agree with you. But I also just want to make sure that that motion was very limited to only municipal and the CVRD. And that's not what has been occurring, and that's not what works, and that's not how it's been done for years. So that's all.
Mr. Elzinga, is there a name for that? Is it emergency response team?
There is. I'm just not sure what it is at this moment. I think that the motion as written can encompass what Director Staples was saying. If I could say one more thing, that in the motion, I would suggest that it is for funding for winter shelter options, because that leaves it very broad at this point.
Got it. For winter shelter options. And there's a 4 after funding. Or no, for funding winter shelter. Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you, Mr. Robbins. Okay, back to my list. Now, Director Morrison, it's your turn.
And I didn't try and press the button. So as much as I love wordsmithing, I think specificity is our enemy here. And just from a recognition of our member municipalities and nations and the likes, I would really strongly recommend that staff be directed to collaborate with First Nations, member municipalities, and engaged organizations, something along those lines. We don't want First Nations and organizations co-equal in this resolution. And also, why is BC Housing the only place that we might get potential funding from? Like for sure, there may not be we've got a new housing minister that might come up with a new program. I'd prefer to say just propose to senior governments for funding winter shelter options. I don't know if the specificity of BC Housing is necessary in this.
We'll go to Ms. Miles Wilson for that.
Yeah, as indicated in the staff report, for the service that we are referring to, we understand that is the only option available to us that we're aware of. There may be new funds that come available, and I think we would pursue any opportunity that was available, but this is the one in front of us.
Director Nicholson. Sorry, Director Morrison, were you done? Yeah, okay. Director Nicholson.
So I think it's May. So I think we've got kind of two issues happening. There's next winter, and then there's making sure that maybe we can pull something off for next winter that is a longer term a solution, but maybe we can't. So I would like a timeline around this somehow, and I don't know whether it needs to be kind of identified with the short term, for 2025, 26, and then for a longer term thing. Yeah. And because if nothing can happen, we need to know that sooner rather than later now, right? For this year, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't keep working on it for the longer term, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Mr. Elzinga.
Thank you. Through to Director Nicholson, that I'm not sure of what the timeline would be. What I would suggest is that with this motion, staff are going to start engaging and would have to report back to the board on progress. And so that if we cannot do something for the 2025-2026 winter season, we would need some alternate direction from the board.
Do we have an understanding of a timeline, what that would be? Like next month, are you coming back? Are you coming back in 3 months?
So I just heard from the CAO, it was August last year. You do not have a meeting in August. I would suggest that July the 23rd, I believe, is your last board meeting before the summer. So that would probably be the target date.
So could we add a point 3 in that staff report back on progress by July, whatever that date was?
By July
Last board meeting in July.
23rd? Just double check that date. 23rd, yeah. Don't even. But if you're able to come before that, you would, right?
Then I'm going to suggest that the word "at" be changed to "by."
Yeah, okay, that's what I was thinking. Thank you, Mr. Elzinga. Okay, Director Nicholson, do you have more?
No.
Okay, Director Martman.
So on the previous motion, they also had number 3. Directors continue to advocate directly and through the UBCM and the AVICC for provincial support to create permanent and seasonal shelters to address growing issues of a house.
So
Are you wanting to let that go?
do we need that? I mean, I feel like we're all pretty united
Right.
on that. I don't know if we need that direction.
It's not for us.
Well, it's that number 3, that directors continue to advocate.
Right, okay. Or staff? Or
Yes,
do
we could change that
Yeah.
wording.
I guess the question is this something that we missed putting on the previous agenda item for UBCM?
Okay, great. Ms. Miles Wilson.
Reflecting on the housing advocacy that we did 2 UBCMs ago, the response back at the time, we were referring to our challenges in finding a site to have a better option, and we were using the EMCR programming, which is quote unquote the Band-Aid solution we're talking about. And we'd requested a meeting and we discussed it with the ministry, and they were referring us to these BC housing programs, which is really informing what we're here to talk about today. They were recommending that we pursue that option.
Thank you, Chair.
I am wondering about recommendation number 2 from the report, not what's here, but references community-led emergency warming centers in electoral areas and smaller communities. And I know that this morning we talked about the importance of Lake Cowichan having a warming center, the South having one, Cow Bay, Ladysmith, et cetera. So I'm wondering if we if this was proposed on the screen covers that, or if we should add number 2 from the report. Director Douglas? Don't touch it. Go ahead, Director
I'm just
Douglas.
moving it over there. That's good, right? Yeah. I take your point, Chair. My only worry with number 2 is it seems to imply that emergency management couch and is only going to be focused on smaller communities and electoral areas.
Got it.
Whereas I think what we've discussed is taking that region-wide approach.
Okay, right, so in number 1 includes sites, plural. So that covers it. Yeah, feels, okay, great. Just wanted to make sure that that was captured. Okay, we have 3 motions in writing on our screen. Thank you very much to our corporate officer for getting that together. Would anybody like to move them? Moved by Director Morrison, seconded by Director Wilson. Any discussion? Vice Chair.
Just after organizations, we've been nitpicking within the CVRD, please.
You're in number 1 instead of just within? Okay. Do we need to make an amendment motion for that? I think that's what was said. It was not transcribed. Thank you for catching that, Director McGonigal. Any more discussion? I will call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motions carry. Thank you very much. All right, Mr. Robbins, we need a motion to go into closed.
We don't have anybody online or in the
sorry.
gallery for question period, so yes. Moving to a motion to close, that the meeting be closed to the public in accordance with the Community Charter, Part 4, Division 3, Section 90, subsection as noted in accordance with each agenda item of the said closed meeting.
Moved by Director Morrison, seconded by Director Istash. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Thank you, everyone. We have a well-deserved break.